That's at forum.cryptounicorns.fun. They've linked their pitch deck over there as well. I will share it in chat. Hold on. Okay, we'll share that later. This AMA is going to have a slightly different format. We do have some questions that come from the community through the forums or in Discord chat. We also have some questions from the community on the thread, specifically for this AMA. I do also have some questions that I'd love to ask our guest interview style. So the community is free to jump in and ask their questions at any time. I will be adding the written questions at the best parts for them that I think would be appropriate. But for those who would like to jump in, just press the button that looks like a raised hand, and once accepted, you'll be able to speak on stage. You can also send questions in the stage chat, but we might not be able to spot them right away. You can give me a ping if you want me to see it. And we'll make sure to answer as many questions as we can until the end of the hour. So let's say hello to our guest for today. His username is SuperRistaSurf, but he hasn't been called by a nickname in a long time. How about you introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Carla. Hi, everybody. This is Shakib from Surf. I've been on the forum recently. I think we exchanged messages with a few of the people in the audience. I'm one of the founders of Surf. We've been working with Laguna for over a year now, since sort of early summer last year. On Unicorn Party. I've known Aaron a long time from the gaming industry, and happy to be here and talking to you all.
All right, love it. Let's do.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, we are. Let's do a bit of an introduction on SurfLabs before we get into the tough questions. So can you tell us more about your team members' experience and their track records?
Sure. As I mentioned, I'm one of the founders. We are 3 co-founders. My 2 co-founders, John and Dom. We worked together at Coda, which is my previous startup. John was our head of engineering there, and Dom was our head of product. They are now respectively same pretty much for Surf, CTO, CPO, if you will. John comes from Peak Games, which is the most successful casual studio out of Turkey and probably one of the top casual studios globally, acquired by Zynga for almost 2 billion a couple years ago. They are makers of Match 3 games. John was an early senior engineer there. And my background is actually I come from AdTech, as it's called. So my first business was an ad network, also in Turkey. I am also Turkish, and sold that to a company called Ad Colony, who were one of the early mobile games ad networks. And I took different roles there. And after that, at the end, I was the chief operating officer, running the whole organization there pretty much. It was a 500 people team, $500 million in revenue. So we scaled quite nicely, helping game developers from all over the world monetize with ads, but also grow their games with ads. So that's my core sort of background and skill set. And then more recently at Coda, we were a hyper casual publisher. And those who might not be very, sort of familiar with these industry sort of jargon that we all love to use, hyper casuals effectively these throwaway games, these mini games that people play for a few days potentially. And for a while, hyper casual was really big. It dominated the charts in the app stores, and we were part of that craze. Our approach was sort of focused on tooling for devs. We were a publisher, so we were helping smaller teams to get to the charts and get lots of downloads. But our approach was by providing them market intelligence, marketing automation, monetization tools, etc. And we attracted about 15,000 developers on our platform and published 20 or so games, generated 100 million in installs. That's probably the most relevant part for Unicorn Party, where we did all of the marketing ourselves for these games. And these installs were all obviously profitably sort of generated by use of performance marketing on platforms like Facebook, Google, and the like. So that's my most recent background together with the team. Dom was responsible for building out the whole platform there. Some of our team members are also still part of the team there on the client side. And during that journey, we met with Aaron, and he had this vision of expanding the Crypto Unicorns IP beyond the core game, the farm sim. And after a few discussions, where our focus and our mind was these skill-based multiplayer games, where in our view, even then, like, it would be a really good combination of what attracts people to Web3, which is community, competition, risk, reward sort of elements in games, but while sort of keeping the games very, very accessible. And that's sort of where Bumper Coins and Mob Run came from. We thought it would be a good sort of starting point without going too far from the more sort of arcade and real-time multiplayer nature of some of the successful games in Web3, in early sort of days of Web3, but still much more accessible and simple sort of gameplay, effectively instant gameplay would be made available. So that's also the origin story, I guess, of Unicorn Party. And as I touched on the forum, and rightfully a lot of people asked about this, what's Coda, what's Surf? I mean, as far as I think Laguna and Crypto Unicorns are concerned, they're one and the same. But we had a lot of team changes through the sort of early innings of the bear run or bear market, and when all the funding etc. was pulled, we had to make some tough decisions, and that's why it made sense to regroup a bit under a new structure to allow for better incentives for the sort of go forward team of our group, which has now become Surf. But there was continuity always with the services provided to Laguna and Crypto Unicorns, and that was the goal of doing this so that the project could sort of live on and be delivered as promised, which we did in the end. So hopefully that's useful. Happy to expand on any parts of that, but hope that was clear.
Thank you. So for any member of the community who wants to ask a question regarding that, feel free to type on chat or raise your hand. But I'll be heading over to our questions thread. Island Girl is here with a couple of hard-hitting questions. So let's start with the first one. So this proposal will be pulling away funds and shortening the runway for our core games. Yes, if there is success, there can be additional revenue coming to us once the funding is paid back. But with 50K monthly fees plus a 200K initial draw for marketing, we'll hit around 500K paid out within 6 months or possibly less. Plus, we will continue to incur monthly 50K dev fees and an unknown amount in additional marketing draws. The first question is, how long do you expect it to break even or have the venture move into profit? Maybe we can have some examples from previous works.
Sure. Cora just asked on the chat where SurfLabs are. That's a quick one and related to the first sort of introduction piece, so I'll address that real quick. We are a UK-based company and team. I live in the UK together with most of our team in and around London, and our company is an English company incorporated in the United Kingdom. Currently in Singapore, traveling. Actually, I think I'm going to see Aaron later today. That's why we are doing this at this time, but normally we are all sort of Europe-based. So thank you, Island Girl, for the question. Also, thank you for the previous thread with all your questions and comments there. I really appreciate the sort of the thoughtful questions. Very fair. So the projection we made is indeed actually around 6 months that for us to be looking at a break-even state. And that should also be by when the fees should not be needed anymore, because the games would be generating enough to cover that. And we would also only after, of course, that those monies are paid, be seeing from the Surf standpoint a revenue share. But to be also very honest about this, these projections, yes, we take every sort of data point we are aware of into consideration. But as rightfully pointed out by others, this is very new, and I think we should all be clear that it might go in very sort of different ways. I think I made a sort of simple calculation breakdown in the previous thread on how many players we might need, and it's not in the millions that we need to get to these numbers and sort of return the investment and a good ROI on it in a meaningful way. We are looking at 10 to 20,000 players a month, and of which, if we can convert 10 to 15% to payers, we are already in a very good place. Plus, that would already be. I mean, of course, sort of I accept or recognize that this would make us one of the biggest Web3 games, but that's exactly the point here, that we see that as a very very likely possibility. I think someone else after Island Girls questions asked the Web2 to Web3 conversions. I want to definitely come back to that, but 10 to 20,000 is nothing compared to both what we experienced in the past, but also to the potential of these games, especially with the use of very simple sort of fiat on-ramp, and I mean in more in more normal people terms, it's not even an on-ramp, it's just a credit card sort of payment interface. And we're also working on getting Apple Pay in there, so for anyone that uses Apple Pay, you will know how like super simple that is. You don't even type anything, you just like double sort of click the button and then it's all done. So that's why I think we can get there, and there's a real chance that we get there. Just maybe put it in context, at Coda, our monthly active was throughout most of the life cycle of the company in the 8 to 10 million players. So that's like what we dealt with then. Different game category. It's not apples to apples. These are more expensive users to get, the paying real money players compared to like hyper casual. I also want to clarify that, but it's nowhere like in sort of around that we didn't deal with. So that would be my answer there. So in short, 6 months should be possible, and that's our internal goal and projection as well. But it might take longer or less. We just have to see the early data, make adjustments, and our, I guess, commitment and our also desire here is to be very communicative about this with the community. It's sort of new way of operating for us, but hopefully this AMA is a sign that we are willing to learn and adapt. So I want to be here often, maybe as part of wider town halls, or just update the community on Discord and forum as we go along, which we will surely be doing also with the Laguna team.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer. Really appreciate your forward thinking there. And I hope that the community understands that you're willing to communicate regarding games. An additional question for this is, with the shortening of our current game runway, the risk falls on us. Do you have anything additional to add on why this would be a good risk for CU? Anything that you'd like to say to convince people who are of this mind?
Sure. I mean, I can sort of talk to this from why I think it's. I mean, of course, I'm aside to this discussion, right? Like I can comment, let's say, as a friend of Laguna, regardless of this project, and that is anyways the case, but also can comment on it from the Surf standpoint. So my understanding is, and I think this question again, JBP3, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but they also asked the same question around why CU should be doing this. I think it's my understanding is that it's a relatively insignificant addition to the cost base, with a very sort of hedged and sort of disconnected from market sentiment type investment. When you look at, I think the great example of this, the recent movement with RBW, in the middle of the bear market, where actually Bitcoin is having another one of its worst weeks, and impacting the rest of the market. RBW at a scene, I think it doubled up over the last sort of week or so, with very, very little, relatively, in relative terms, very little volume coming in means of a, sort of series of purchases. And it just shows, I think, like what a small sort of net new source of buy pressure or buy sort of demand can do to the token of a project like this. Especially now that there is no free money floating around from various sources, both venture and sort of DeFi and otherwise. So I think this is why it's a good experiment to run at the least, and good project to support in my mind, because this could very well be a very steady 50, 100, 200, 500K a month inflow, not just in means of revenues, but also in means of actual RBW buys. And I touched on this in the forum, in between messages might have been missed. A credit card transaction can technically and very practically be tied to a smart contract that then turns every single fiat deposit into an RBW buy. This is not ready, and it won't be ready day one, but there's a path to that. We have the payment provider lined up that's working on this. They're already integrated with Polygon, so it's a matter of just tying up RBW as a currency, which shouldn't be a major issue. There are some sort of implications, so we need to think through that carefully, but that's possible. And just as one simple aspect of this expansion with Unicorn Party, we could have anyone coming and playing the games without having to know that they are playing something that's structured upon the CU economy with RBW as the underlying token, etc. So that's just to it's a sort of maybe almost like a detailed sort of low level point, but I think a good example of why and how a project like this can change things quite significantly, dramatically. Whilst the core Laguna team and other partners and other members of the ecosystem are working on more pure Web3 native products and solutions and marketing initiatives and all that. This is for a small percentage increase in cost for a limited time. This creates a very I guess outsized potential to get exogenous net fresh revenues into the ecosystem. And then there's the halo effect of crypto unicorns being the first IP with real decent game network out there that's second or and now third party, and being in the app store and the token price rising. We know how little movements can lead to a lot of pile-on in Web3, given everybody's so hungry for success right now and so hungry for good signs. I don't want to try and oversell, but I think there's also a real chance that with this sort of pioneering that the CU community would be doing, we see also strong halo effects and attract other Web3 communities and players to come and I guess try and participate in the upside. So that's how I think about it. Hard to quantify most of this, but even if we go with the example of, okay, if you want to turn back sort of 6 months of dev cost at 50K, that's 300. And Island Girl made the calculation. It's 500,000 paid out. If you want to return this and turn a profit, that's 500. Let's say $700,000 in revenue generated 6 months from now. If that starts to go straight into RBW, I think those volumes will start to make a proper dent pretty quickly. It will be very, very visible. So that's why I think, like, if this works out, it's going to be impactful. And I also want to say, I guess, it's not as binary as some people might think. The games, they won't be, okay, it's just failed and complete and utter fail. It might be low volume, it might be a longer burn, but in the end, I think we will get something out of it. Whether it's 5x on the investment or only 1x over a year, I think that's more where the question is. So there's very little chance this is a complete, money thrown out the window situation, just by nature of how games work and how the cost structure is structured.
All right, well said. Next up is a technical question. If the proposal passes, will Unicorn Party and Mob Run shift ownership to SurfLabs, or will the ownership of those two titles stay within Laguna Games?
No, and I'll also add the next question to the answer here, just to maybe move a little bit quickly. I know I'm going to some like detail in some areas. So the very quick answer and clear answer to the second question is no. The ownership stays with Laguna, and also for any of the rest of the Crypto Unicorns IP, including Unicorn Party brand, call it itself, stays. Whatever happens to the proposal, it stays with Laguna. And then if the proposal is approved and SurfLabs dissolves or breaks off into a new company, if we can't provide the services, then obviously, especially in the case of Mobran and Bumpercorns, they will stay with Laguna, and if there are functioning games and functioning assets, then and if Surf no longer exists, which I mean hopefully is not the case anytime soon, we would then probably try and find a way to transfer those assets to CU or Laguna. But I think our ability to survive through the last 18 months, despite everything going on with the market and having delivered bumper corns and have Mobran ready to go, is also hopefully a good sign of how resilient we are as a team. I've been again in the industry for over 20 years and want to continue doing this. I have lots of involvements personally with funds and other studios, other companies, and want to be continue to do so. So reputation wise, I would personally, but also from a Surf standpoint, do everything we can to make sure there's continuity with these services.
All right, we have a question from Alandria. Do we have an exclusive with SurfLabs for the product, or is this just white labeled software?
Yes, so it's not an exclusive. Obviously, again, Mobran and Bumpercorn, given they belong in their entirety to Laguna, they are Laguna, so they are, I mean, very much exclusive down to the last line of code. It all belongs to Laguna, and I mean, when I say Laguna, I guess I also mean CU are contractors with Laguna, and then I am not. I don't know exactly how the relationship between the DAO and the company works in that regard, but that belongs to them. But the rest of the games and the rest of the platform is white labeling, I guess. I mean, if you want to call it that, that's fine. But the IP, the technology belongs to us. What prevents us from copying this 400 times? I think we know now from various examples. I mean, at least I can say that just having a product doesn't really make sense. And I think Clara, this was one of your questions that you had prepared. Why we want to work with crypto unicorns is maybe good time to address this. We want to work with CU because we want to tap into the existing community and basically launch from that point with the community. Because I've been in the space a while, and I've seen we've all seen many projects that have succeeded or failed. I think Crypto is one of those. I mean, clearly that have succeeded massively in the early days of the sort of first Web3 games run, but also maintained a real team, a real studio with a real community and a very loyal base. I think for us, it's both shortcutting go-to-market together with a strong community, plus the goodwill and the credibility that comes with the brand itself. When we go to marketing partners, game launchers, and other Web3 communities and other Web3 players and talk about Unicorn Party, saying, hey, this is Surf, we come from this kind of background. And I mean, like we're having the questions with the CU community here, the credibility just will be different. This is why we want to work with them. That's why yes, we could technically or theoretically copy many times over and work with others as well, which we I think want to do and should do to be a strong partner and have a better chance of surviving. But the chance of success is lower and lower if you go to smaller and smaller communities or just do our own brands. And the differentiation will be that this is the very first of its kind. And we will be launching crypto unicorns before everything else. Well, unicorn party to be precise. And that usually does make a big difference. And if not, then I think working with the community, we of course also want to differentiate with the benefits to the members, etc. So I think that's how I think about it. Also, to be honest, we want to see initial success first before we start planning 6 months, 12 months ahead. We don't have the bandwidth to do many of these all at once anyways. That's why we are very much focused on unicorn party right now, and we want to make that a success.
All right, thank you. We do have a question here. What are the plans for Unicorn Party and Mob Run if the revised proposal is not approved? Would you like to take this question, or do you feel like Rice could answer this question better?
No, I'm happy to answer. I mean, the baseline is we continue to support those, and this is not a either or. This is not like this is our desire to expand into this direction. The new proposal, for all the reasons I outlined here, but also in the proposal and in the forum. But if the proposal is not approved, then as long as Laguna wants us to be, we are going to be the partner that supports those games in the current sort of scope, which is mostly sort of maintaining and of course launching Mobran and making tweaks as we go along. It's more incremental. It's more sort of I guess as is would be the plan most likely. And probably not my place to sort of make this comment. But reality is, I think we should make clear. Reality is, yes, the games will be live, the games will be fine, and they are going to be played. But they won't get the dedicated marketing and product support from a team of our caliber the way we would do in the Unicorn Party case. Simply because we can't dedicate the resources we can if we don't agree on the expansion. Plus, more strategically, I do believe the features we are discussing here on conversion engagement, plus the types of games we are discussing, they will give it a much bigger chance of becoming a true winner in this space. Whereas Mobran and Bumpercorn right now, they are almost designed to be exclusively for the existing CU community as a companion experience. That's like a fun game night type of thing, without necessarily thinking so much about how we can get it into front of in front of other hundreds of thousands or millions of players, and that's what excites us more. Simply commercial, there's more upside there for both sides. That's why, yes, the games would continue to be supported, but they would mostly remain the way they are, rather than being like grown into what we think they can become.
All right, interesting. I think you mentioned there that you want to put these games in front of a lot more people. This question is relevant. How do you plan to obtain that player liquidity?
So I think this is really the crux of it all. This is the most critical point. So, and I think it goes back to what I just said. When you have an NFT gating in place, which we do have right now for hard currency games, when you have leaderboards that are just promoted within the community effectively, and out of sort of around the 2K DAUs we have for CU, the core experiences, we did attract at times 20-25% of that audience into bumper corns. I think the difference will be that we open it up to non-corn holders, effectively to anyone who can come in with a wallet, or even anyone that doesn't have a wallet or doesn't even know what a wallet is. So that suddenly makes it from a pool of 2,000 daily players to literally 2 billion, Of course, it doesn't mean they're all waiting in line to play our next game. We need to get in front of them and we need to convince them. But those marketing funnels have been used by many studios, including us, in the past to drive successful tens of thousands of players. And even with 400, we had some time zones like fairly decent liquidity in the soft currency room. So we don't need to go 100x from here to have a pretty good experience in means of matchmaking. Our experience is if you get to 3,000-4,000 DAU per game. I love the Mobran cheers on the chat. We should definitely obviously talk about Mobran. But anyway, so I think if we get to a couple of thousand players a day, we will be in a place where there's better liquidity. The other thing is, and this is a point we made with Laguna in the discussions. So Mobran and BumperCon are real-time multiplayer games, right? So 8 people, 6 people, whatever the number is, they all need to be online at the very same moment to enter the same room and play. And all of them have to remain in the room to play, which is great, which is possible, which is really fun when it happens. But also that turns the need of online players to concurrent, literal concurrent online, players. Whereas the new series of games we are proposing, like Solitaire and Pool and Bingo and whatnot, they can be played async because they are board games and card games that can be played when a player plays it in the morning time and they get matched to another player who may play in the evening time. But as long as they are within the same 24, 48-hour window, their results can be compared and they can be matched. So it changes the liquidity paradigm quite significantly, and that's another way of sort of combating liquidity issues or cold start issues.
All right. Next up, we have the Genji requesting to speak. Please comment over. Hey.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. So, what you've said so far, a lot of it has been very interesting. But one thing that kind of stuck with me is how you would essentially use Unicorn Party as like a springboard to further your interest in Web3 and basically like find other projects that would also be interested. That's interesting, but considering that the Crypto Unicorns DAO is actually going to be taking like a bit of a risk investing in you guys, no offense, wouldn't it be nice if instead we could like partner up like more exclusively? Like for example, let's say that you found another project that would be interesting. Let's say Sunflower Game or Wolf Game. What about if that partnership also included unicorns? Like it also included crypto unicorns, and somehow and RBW would also benefit, because otherwise, like let's say that you ended up partnering with the more successful or project that has like more of an audience, like Wolf Game, for example, then it would make sense for you guys to relocate your dev efforts to that project. And then we would be like sort of like left in the blue. In the end, like I'm sure you guys would continue supporting crypto unicorns, but it would give us more reassurance if we were somehow included in any future partnerships you guys have.
That's a great point. I think I should clarify. So yes, if we do get interest from someone with a very large audience and lively community and all that, we would definitely want to explore working with them. But when I said we want to use the existing brand goodwill community audience as a springboard, as a launch pad, what I didn't mean for SurfLabs to find new partners. And I think someone made the comment either here or on the chat that why we would just go charge fees, right? And I think actually that's Alejandria's comment or question. So I think, like, to clarify 2 points. One is the consumer revenues, the player revenues are way more interesting for anybody in gaming rather than fees charged. With Coda, for instance, when we did all those installs with the hyper casual games, our annual revenue was sort of between first year was 5 million, second year 10, then almost sort of nearing 20 million dollars in annual revenue. When you compare that to the 50K a month we are discussing here it's just a, I guess, sign of times. We do need some subsidy from a partner to be able to work on this, but that's not what we are doing this for. And I clarified also on the forum that covers only a portion of our total cost base. That's not for the entire team to be paid with even some sort of a profit. It's literally a form of subsidy rather than to make us whole on the whole thing. So, but your main point, Genji, I think is very fair to ask, and no offense taken at all. I mean, you are investing, in a different form, and we really appreciate we appreciate. I mean, I appreciate the even the consideration from the CU side. In a case like that, what we would want to do actually, and what we definitely discuss is like bringing other communities into Unicorn Party with their NFTs and token and whatnot, to give them a reason to become a part of it, but using unicornparty.com as the underlying platform, meaning all the revenue generated would anyways be shared as sort of proposed with the DAO.
Okay.
Unless we go
that
and
makes
make
sense.
Yeah.
But sorry to interrupt. I
Sure,
get what
sure.
you're saying, but like for a more specific, like a solution that I see, and like this is just me, I'm like shooting an idea. Basically, you mentioned how any credit card transaction could essentially be in a contract which buys RBW, and obviously, like you said, that won't be on launch day. But that's like a very interesting thing, I think, for like all crypto unicorns investors. What about if you brought another project in, then we keep that part? Like even if they basically like any game that they have, like crypto unicorns would still profit because RBW would still be brought from any transaction that another game brings in. And maybe it would be less if it's not a unicorn native game, but basically like RBW would still profit from those other transactions as well.
So
Just to be like more specific.
yeah, so let's say whatever sunflowers. I'm not familiar with some of the projects you mentioned.
Yeah.
We do the exact same sunflowerparty.com. Is that what you're talking about? Just so I'm
No,
clear.
no, no. What I'm saying is instead of sunflowerparty.com, Sunflower Game gets integrated into Unicorn Party Game, unicornparty.com.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly what I was saying earlier. Yeah, so that's exactly. So we would, let's say we find partners like those, communities like that who are interested to be part of this. They don't have the resources or the community to justify a standalone initiative on their end. We would, I think, definitely want to bring them in, as long as the CU community feels comfortable. We all believe there's value, and it's not some sort of empire attack from their end. But we would let them play the games, maybe even use their own token. But on our end, as soon as we receive the deposits, we would just use them to either boost the treasury or use it for effectively buybacks. So that's how
essentially
I
what I'm
think.
saying, like just to be clear, like if you got, like you said, we wouldn't have exclusivity, but if we had like exclusivity where we were partners and essentially like you got other partners, but other partners would always profit from like our part. Crypto unicorns would always profit from other partners. I think that would help the DAO vote more in your favor. For example, like just to clarify, like a revenue split where, for example, Sunflower Game or Wolf Game or any other Web3 native game comes in, then
Mhm.
Crypto Unicorns still gets 30% of the profit generated. Like that's just a number I invented out of nowhere. But for example, like you guys would obviously have to find something that's fair, but Crypto Unicorn would always get a percentage from any other Web3 game that gets integrated into Unicorn Party, and an exclusivity clause, which is that you couldn't make a Wolf Game Party.com, for example. So Wolf Game could get integrated into Unicorn Party, but you as a company would not be able to go make a wolfgameparty.com for the next 5 years or so, for example. Like that type of exclusivity
Um,
would go a long way. I think
should
that
that?
would
I
be
mean, I understand.
a very interesting to the DAO for the simple reason that some people have basically raised the concern if you're a dev shop and etc. And like honestly, I don't want to doubt their qualifications or anything. Like that's not the point. But it's more like what exactly are we paying for? And if you're a partner, then like an exclusivity of that partnership arrangement would go a long way, in my opinion. This is just my 2 cents, which is also reflection of the thoughts I've seen floating around in the community.
Yeah, I understand. So I think a lifetime or 5-year exclusive on anything we do in this direction changes the opportunity cost quite significantly for us, and that would then make the required funding upfront or throughout probably very different, which I think would make the risk even bigger for CU and for both sides. So that's, I think, why we didn't explore that, very simply. I think working together to like launching another platform like this is a big job. Even after it's built, you don't just replace the logo and you go launch, right? Like to be clear, and the development side of this is not where the value is ultimately. The value will be in the go-to-market. And if we have something functioning, working to create copies of this with just any project is not what we want to do, because that's not the business model. We are not in it for the fees. And if it doesn't return a profit, then it's not going to be interesting for us down the line either. Hence, we would only do it with large projects, large communities, large brand, like big brands like Crypto Unicorn, and there aren't like 100 or even 3 more like waiting to get something like this. So I think for something that has very low probability and practically low incremental value add, creating exclusivity and creating just additional cost is not the right starting point. If we see it flying and both sides want to go deeper, what you're suggesting is almost like a joint venture, like in the way that we are limited in what we can do, and everything we do the DAO gets an upside. Then we are more than happy to discuss how we bring the two parties together in a closer partnership, right? But I think slicing a cake that's not yet there in a way that's quite prohibitive and suddenly creates, as I said again, like big opportunity costs on our side, which we then try to reflect to you, which then makes it even more sort of high risk for you. Is that, I mean, in my sense, it doesn't make business sense so much. So I think this is as low cost as it gets to make an attempt at this, a very serious attempt, where practically I can like very happily disclose you are the only party we are talking to about this. Our alternative path is raising venture capital and doing it on our own. And then we would still want to try and partner with crypto unicorns in some way, but it wouldn't be as integrated and it wouldn't be as beneficial for crypto unicorns, of course, because there wouldn't be any funding coming through. So hope that clarifies. I think it's an interesting idea, but I would think of it as a potential step 2 instead of saying, okay, we want to just secure that upfront. We didn't even explore that, to be honest, for these reasons.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I just like a closing statement. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but I think one of the worries that people could have is that once you've built this platform, that you can, and you've said that you are interested in building these type of platforms for other Web3 projects, eventually, like we as a community would or could potentially be left out. So maybe 5 years is a bit much, but there's a type of exclusivity or like a joint venture arrangement could go a long ways. Anyways, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Stealthy and Sparkly, for having me on, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
You too. Have a nice day, Genji. All right. Let's move on to more written questions. If anybody would like to ask more spoken questions, please just press the request to speak button and we will get you on the stage. Time check, we do have 11 minutes left. Okay, let's here's a question. With the lack of clarity in USA around securities and regulation, have you checked with the legal team regarding marketing RBW as an in-game currency? What were their thoughts?
Yes, so we did get advice on this. Allowing people deposit with crypto is not a problem in the jurisdictions, at least in the US, where we want to release the games. So the quick answer is there is no problem with that. We wouldn't be, to be clear though, marketing the currency RBW in any way. We would just let people, if they have it, deposit with that. What we would be doing on the background, though, would be if we decide to do so together with Laguna and the DAO, I suppose, is using RBW as the underlying currency, so that every other currency would be deposited into that. So that's TBD, but that's a possibility. But we wouldn't be selling RBW just because that's then indeed selling a currency. That's not what we would be doing. We would just let people deposit into the game with their existing tokens, and RBW would be obviously the one. I mean, initially the only one we allow.
All right. Okay, now we have some questions from Cora. Does the current 50K in perpetuity and after the game suite brings in more than 50K in revenue?
Yes, I was trying to make sure that I understand. Yes, so the moment we hit 50K in revenue share, that would effectively the payout from the DAO would come down to 0. If it's 20K, then it comes down to 30, etc. So that's the idea.
Got it. All right, and here's some questions about bumper coins. What do you see as the most pressing flaws for bumper coins and mob run, and how do you plan to address them to make these games successful?
Yes, so I think there's definitely little elements of polish and quality and sort of definitely improvement opportunities for the load time for sure, clearly, but also the, I guess, lag and all that. Like, so existing core gameplay, I think we are very much there, and shout out to Louis here, who was a really good partner to work with to push the quality up. But those are, I think, the minority of the impactful opportunities. I think the biggest and current sort of focus is UX, the user experience around how one gets from install to gameplay much faster than right now. I think we have like 7 steps between game install and the first moment you're actually in the room or on the platform. So that's one. And that's, I mean, maybe sort of simplifying it a bit, but effectively we want to remove any kind of wallet gating, NFT gating, no major tutorial, no account creation, install, click, go. That's the idea. So with one tap we want to get people in a room, which will help a lot. And then I went into detail on this on the forum. The what we would call meta features, meaning anything that sits above and on top of the core gambling experience, gaming experience. Sorry, that is how the rooms would be adjusted according to player sort of volume. How we would have seasonal offers around whatever 4th of July and Labor Day and Halloween and whatnot, which do have a big impact on helping people make that first sort of deposit and these types of things. So these features then will be of course be applicable across all the games, and that's where a lot of our focus will be. Call it live operations, call it engagement, monetization features. So we will focus on those a lot.
All right. The second question is, increasing the utility for RBW is great, but do you see these planned games benefiting the rest of the CU economy and IP, such as encouraging higher demand for unicorns or other CU crypto assets?
Sure. So I want to answer this, and I want to make sure I also address JPP3's questions before we run out of time. So I think the wider CU economy impact and why this will be good for CU, and I think also the Web 2 to Web 3 conversion, because that's been sort of core part of our core I guess promise. They are all one and the same, so I want to address those all in one. I think in very short, we don't have an immediate path to or immediate sort of clear direct plan to make Web2 players buy crypto unicorns NFTs. That's not what we are trying to do, and indeed that's probably the hardest nut to crack. Normies don't see value in sort of decentralized ownership, immutability, and they don't also think in speculative terms, which I think was a lot of the motivation early on with NFTs. So we are not going to try and make that the core sort of value proposition here. The value proposition will be, hey, it's a fun, quick game. You can play for soft currency, but you can also play for real money. And the subset of players who get competitive enough and have that sort of risk taker in their hearts, we want to convert them to depositing real money, and that's how we want to enhance it. If this leads to, or when this leads to RBW value increase, and when we do introduce NFT based benefits, be it like a battle pass or collectibles or whatnot, these are all possibilities we want to just test, iterate, figure out what's best over time. These are more complex designs, so hence it's not sort of our number one priority. We want to go with the proven low hanging fruit first, and then introduce these. When we do that, and when we show that, okay, if you hold an NFT, if you are simply like a gold member of the frequent flyer club of crypto unicorns, then you get 10, 15, 20% bonus each time, etc. And you get to be in the cool kids room and whatnot, right? Like all the benefits we want to think about. Then I think we will slowly also start selling those NFTs in the game in ways that are very Web2 friendly. And that's what that looks like, TBD. I don't know, in all honesty. I can't say we know exactly how that should look like, but the benefits are going to be the core part of it. So that's how we think about it. So it will be indirect. It will be not in the first 3 to 6 months, probably. I can say that, just to be very transparent and upfront about it. But I do think the RBW impact will drive interest in crypto unicorn from wider Web3. So that's probably more likely to come first. And then down the line, if we have tens and ideally hundreds of thousands of players, then we will introduce collectibles, we will introduce NFT benefits without calling them NFTs, and with the hope that people, are so hooked in the game that they want to get these longer term benefits. Hope that helps at least paint the picture. I know it's a bit of a sort of zipped up answer, but with the remaining time, I want to make sure we get to everything.
All right, okay, let's do the last question. The proposal claims that the operating cost to launch the games in the pitch deck is approximately 150K per month. Is that the SurfLabs budget or the budget for CUIP games?
I don't know where 150K number comes from. Yes, so that's the dedicated development budget for CUIP games, pretty much. I realize now I did mention it's 1/3 of our cost. Sorry, I couldn't make that connection immediately. That would be the part of our cost that effectively goes to this project. But to be also fair, because we hold ownership of the IP, this is not what we are, just investing from our end. We are, we do pay those salaries and all that. But I guess, yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. Sorry to blabber there, but the short answer is yes.
No worries, we're used to long answers here. All right,
Yeah.
so try to save Cora's typing anything extra, but while she's doing that, I do think that members of the community might want to have a word with you after this AMA. What's the best way to reach you? Are you okay with them messaging you on Discord?
Yeah, 100%. Happy to continue the conversation here. I'm also happy to go over time if that's the thing you guys do. I have time. If anybody else wants to do that, happy to do that. But otherwise, I'm on Discord. Feel free to message me. Also happy to do another session, maybe with a smaller group or the same group. Whatever helps to clarify questions.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. You did mention that you're interested in having a smaller session with our governance council members. Would you like to extend that invitation to them?
Yeah, 100%. I thought we had extended it already. So, but yeah, if in case that wasn't communicated, happy to do that. Very happy to do that.
All right. Okay, so that seems to be all of our questions for now. If we are going to have additional questions, we'll make sure that they get answered. But we have reached the end of the hour, and that is the last question, folks. Thank you so much for showing up to the AMA. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. PST, for another AMA. Sorry, that's Thursday, 8 a.m. PST, for another AMA. But that's going to be about Shadow Forge with LG Chef and Ziori. We'll post a recording of this AMA in our socials if you would like to give it a real listen. And don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow unicorn fam who couldn't make it. If you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on the forum. So that's the crypto unicorn party, sorry, unicornparty.com revised proposal by Super Brista Surf. Same username as here. And this has been the SurfLabs Ask Me Anything, hosted by Sparkly Unicorn with Stealthy Unicorn on Tech. Any last words, Shake?
Thank you so much for the questions. Really appreciate them. This was fun. Hit me up with more, please, on Discord and on the forum. Happy to answer anything else.
All right. We do have one more thing. At the end of every AMA, we have our guests say uwu. Can you say uwu for us?
Uwu.
Okay, I'm sold.
I'm probably too boomer for that, but tried my best. Uwu. Cheers.
You did great. You did great. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.